Okay, it seems I'm live. So welcome back everyone to another session. And today we are going to continue with our series. So basically we are doing Java series where we have done with the first, this is the 8th day we are doing it, and then we will be doing it for a few more days. Okay, awesome. So just need to do some setting before everyone joins. So let everyone join and then we can start this. Okay, streaming looks good, right, everyone? Let me know in the chat if everything is good. Let me know my audio is good, and then we can get started. And by the time you are doing that, we can take up some questions, and I can see a lot of questions are coming up. Okay, Silver Fang won't make to manage. I don't know what that means. Yeah, after many days, yes, I was in Bangalore for a hackathon and I was not able to go live, but I'm back now. We will be doing live now every day. And okay, there's a question. There's a point from Anurag. Anurag is asking me to change the timing from for the Java full stack course to 2:30 p.m. As of now, it's not possible because we have already announced, and most of them have joined for that particular time. So that's will be continuing with the same time here. Okay, so the timing for that batch, which will run for 6 months, is 9 to 12. Okay, Mono Gaming says no price. Menti sir, no, Menti has still some bugs, and that's why we're not doing it as of now. And I have some. We are working on some product. We'll be talking about that soon. Uh, okay, Gaurav says Navin, you look too tired today. It's okay to take a break and continue tomorrow. No, I'm good. I'm good. It's just that since I was not there in the office from last 3 to 4 days, there was a lot of work which I was supposed to complete, and yeah, I'm good. It's not. I'm not tired actually. I'm excited to take this live session. Okay, so start new batch of Android development after this course. I'm not into Android, so I'm not sure how when I'll be back with Android. I was doing Android in 2015, 16, 17, I guess. Yeah, 15, 16, and no Android from that point. Saroj says, please cover streams. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. So I can see a lot of people have already joined, and now before we start coding, I want you to hit that like button, and we'll get started. Um, awesome. Okay, there's a question from Silver Fang. Will there be those pre-recorded courses available once you start the live classes? Yes, the recorded courses will be available. So after every session, the recorded video will be available and you can watch them anytime. Awesome. Okay, Mono Gaming says the last topic was camel casing. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it. Okay, Kavya says, is there still a chance to join the Java course? Yes, we are. We have kept it open for a few more days, so you can still join the batch. The only thing is, okay, maybe we'll talk about that later. Yeah, but you can still join. Okay. Yes, you can join. You can join Swaraj. You can join the batch. It's still open. Awesome. So now we are changing the scene here, and let's get back to the code. So whatever we have done till now is we have talked about variables, we have talked about classes, objects, and some part of JVM. Now in this session, we'll be talking about two different things. One, we'll talk about static keyword, and second, we'll talk about the concept of inheritance. But again, that depends upon the time, how much time we have today, and then we'll get started. My voice is low, is it? Okay, just a second. Oh, it's full. It's good, right? My voice is good. Okay, maybe you have to increase your the audio level on your device. Okay, there's a question from Saurabh. Do we have projects in the blockchain course? Yes. Every topic, every major topic has a big project. Awesome. So now I think everything is good. We can get started with the code. Okay, so till this point we have talked about the constructors as well, right? And have we talked about constructor yet? Yes, I guess we have talked about constructor. So in the last video we have talked about encapsulation, right? Where you have variables, and to access those variables we need to use methods. Example, to access this variable which is string name, we will be using method which is get and set, and we can do that with the help of the IntelliJ IDEA as well. And of course, we'll focus on this topic more. But before that, I need to talk about something. So what I will do now is I will just keep this thing as it is. I will just remove this particular block. I don't want the variables as of now. Let me keep this stuff empty. Okay, let me just keep this empty. So as you can see, we have the empty class, which is alien class here. And here we have the methods, right? So let me just remove this part as well. So we have this object which is alien. Now, one thing to remember, every time you create an object, it will call a constructor. Now, how do we define a constructor? It's very simple. You can just go back to this alien part here, and you can mention public. Just a second. Is it good? Yeah. Okay, so you can say public alien. And here you can define stuff, right? So every time you create an object, it will call a constructor. So what I will do here is I will print in constructor. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm creating an object of alien, and that's how you do it. You can say alien a1 is equal to new alien, and then you are able to call the constructor, and then it is getting printed, which is in constructor. Now this completely makes sense, right? Now what if I create multiple objects? In fact, first let me run this code and let's see what happens. So when you run this code, you can see we have in constructor, so that works. But how about if I create multiple objects? Example, if I copy this code and paste it here, you can see if okay, we have to change the name a bit, and let me just run this code once again. And you can see it will say in constructor 2 times, because in total we got 2 objects. So remember this, every time you get a constructor, it will call, every time you create an object, it will call a constructor. Okay, that thing you have to remember. The next thing is, let me just go back here and let me create a method, or maybe let me create a variable here. Now, when you talk about alien, we have used different variables, right? Example, we have used int age, then we got string name. So let's say we have these 2 variables, right? And then every variable here will have a different value for different object. I guess we have defined 2 objects here. We got A1 and A2, and both the values for this, the values for this particular 2 objects will be different. So there are 2 different boxes. You can imagine one alien box and second alien box. In that one box, you have age and name, and the second box, you have age and name again. So what I will do here is I will say, let me assign the value for age. I will say A1.age. So let's say for the first alien, the age is 15. And we can say a1.name, let's say the name is Naveen in this case, and okay, that's not my age, but imagine. Then a2 dot, I will say age is equal to second person, let's say 31, and a2 dot name, because in coding, age is no bar, right? Anyone can code. And here I will just name the person, let's say Harsh. I know Harsh is not 31, but let's keep it that way. Okay, so we got 2 different objects with 2 different values, right? And that's the beauty. Every time you get a new object, it will have a different value. So if I try to print the value of a1.age and a2.age, now this will be 2 different values, not the same value. As you can see, we have 2 different values. We got 15 and 31. Now, what if you have a variable which is unique for all the objects? Example, in this case, when you say int age string name, these values will be different for different objects. What if you want a particular variable to have a common value for all the objects? Something like this. Let me create a variable. What should I say? What we have in common? I know what device we use. I'm just guessing. Okay. So let's say we are saying string device, and then here what I can do is what I want is if A1 is using a particular device. Okay, let's say the device is a laptop. I want every alien, every object, doesn't matter how many objects you have. Okay, so let's say if one class have multiple objects, every object should have a same value. But in this case, it's not possible, right? Example, if I try to print the device here for A1 and device for A2, and if I run this code, you can see for the device for A1, the value for A1 device is laptop, but the value for A2 device is null because we have not assigned it yet. So what I want is if I assign a value for one particular, if I assign a value for this device, it should be applicable for all the objects. In this case, what we can say is, hey, this name and age is actually a variable which is related to object. Okay, now normally we call this type of variables which are related to objects as instance variable. Now, what is instance? An object is an instance. Example, when you have a Chrome and when you open multiple tabs of it, there is multiple instance of Chrome. Example, let's say, you have seen that row houses, or maybe a row house when you have multiple house which look similar, which are almost same actually. So as a builder, when they build this row house, they design the house on paper. No, that's a class. And when they get one house ready, that's one object. Second house, second object. Third house, third object, right? Now, if I buy one of those houses and if I paint with a different color, so let's say by default the color was beige, and now I want to paint it with orange, or maybe I want to paint it with red, and who will paint the house as red. But let's say if I paint my house with red color, will it be applicable for all the houses? Of course not, right? Every house is individual. They have a different identity. In the same way, age here is different. Different objects will have a different value, and we call them as instance. One house is one instance. Second house is second instance. So if you want this device to stay common for everyone, what you can do is, example, let's say a security guard for a row house. So let's say for the entire row house, we have a security guard, and we want only one security guard who will manage everything. What if we change the security guard so it is applicable for all the houses, right? So in the same way, if you have multiple objects of alien and all the alien need to have the same device, we can make it, instead of device, let's say technology. So let's say you're joining this course, okay? And in this course, everyone here is learning Java. Instead of device, actually technology makes sense. So everyone here is learning Java. So we can say Java. But then if I run this code, of course, this will not work. Okay, because I have to change it. Of course, it will not work because we still got null here, because for the second object is not, we have not assigned it. So what I can do is I can say, hey, this stack is actually static. Static means it belongs to a class. So if you specify a value for a class, if you specify a variable for a class, it remains common for all the object. So even if you change that with one object, it is applicable for all the objects. Okay. Now if I run this code, you can see the same value will be assigned to all the objects. But what if, second object says, hey, the technology has been changed now. So till this point, we were learning Java, and now we are going to learn blockchain. So if A2 says, now we are going to learn blockchain, the entire course will change, and then everyone is a part of blockchain course. Okay. So from Java, we are moving towards blockchain, and that's one of the announcement. Soon, maybe in next 2 weeks, we are going to start with the blockchain live course, the free course on YouTube. Excited? Let me know in the chat window. So basically, I'm planning to go for Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum, Solana is not there. Ethereum will be, yeah. So we'll focus on Ethereum and Solidity programming. So basically, what we're doing here is, if you make a variable static, it is common for all the objects, right? So as you can see here, if A2 says tech is equal to blockchain, it is applicable for all the objects. Now in future also, example at this point, if I create one more object, let's not do that. If I create one more object, it is applicable for that as well. Now tell me one thing. If you know that a particular variable is common for all the object, don't you think we should refer that object not with an object, but with a class name? So can I simply say alien.tech? Doesn't it make sense? since it is common for all the objects. Example, why you have to say a1.name, a2.name, because the name variable is specific to a particular object. So you have to specify which object you're talking about. Are you talking about a1? Are you talking about a2? So when you change this name to Harsh, are you talking about a1 or a2? That's why this object reference is important. But if we talk about a static variable, which is common for all the object, you can actually use a class name, right? Doesn't that make sense? And that's why these are normally referred as a class variable. So this age and name, they are instance variable. This tech here is a class variable. So if you want to have a variable which is common between all the object, just make it static and done, right? Now, one more thing. Now we can use static with a variable, right? How about this? If I create a method, let's say show, okay, I mean, maybe not be show, let's say show. Now what happens is if I work with this particular method and this is just printing, in method or in show, we can simply say in show. So what we are doing is, if I say if I have a method which is show and if I'm printing in show, if I want to call this show method, example, if I go back to my main method, we'll have the things. As of now, let me just remove all this extra stuff. Let me only focus on this method now. If I want to call this method show, and if I do that, you can see we got an error because it's not able to find show. What's the solution for this? If you want to call a method which belongs to a separate class, you need an object of it. So here we can say a1.show and job done, right? So you have to specify an object or a reference to call a particular method. So in this case, I'm saying a1.show. But what if I want a method which is not related to any object? I want a method which works with a class. Okay, in that case, what you can do is you can make this method as static. Okay, so you can make the method static as well. The only thing is, of course, you can call that with the help of an object. But if you have a static method, normally we call them with the help of a class. So let me repeat. When you have a instance variable and a normal method, you call that with the help of object. When you have a static variable and a static method, you call that with the help of a class. I hope that makes sense. Okay, Gaurav says if means if a variable is static, then if one object changes the value, it will change for all. That is correct. So that's why when you design your classes, you have to remember what type of variables you want to go for. If you think you have variables which are different for all the objects, of course, instance variable makes sense. But if you think, hey, this is a variable which will remain common for all the objects, of course, you can make it as static, right? Or maybe you can talk about a classroom. So let's say we are teaching you Java. So you can say, hey, we are learning Java now. Next, technology change, right? Now we are learning blockchain. It's applicable for all the classes, all the objects here. One more example we can take. Let's say you're working for a company and every employee will have certain things, right? Employee ID, employee name, the department, and all the stuff. And also every employee will have the office address. So let's say you only have one branch, okay, only one headquarter of a company. So by default, all the employees will have the same address. But now what if the location has been changed? Currently, you are having your office in Mumbai, and now you are shifted to Bangalore. In this case, what happens is you just have to change the address for one particular object. This is applicable for everyone. So that's why your designing of your classes are important. What type of variables you should use? Do you want to make it a static variable or do you want to make it a non-static variable? You have to choose that. Yeah, that's right. So static variables can be used with the help of a class name, and same goes for static methods. They can be used with the help of class name. Okay, Gaurav says, but static can lead to inconsistency. See, as a programmer, it is your job to understand what you're calling. Okay, it's not user who will specify, hey, I want to work with static variable, I want to work with instance variable. No, it's you. So if you are writing a code, it is your responsibility to specify how you want to use a variable. Okay. But yes, there is a chance that you by mistake if you make a change, and that's why using an IDE actually makes sense, because all the normal fonts are normal, right? But the moment you use a static method or a static variable, it gets a italic font. If you can see, name looks normal here, but if you look at tech, it's a Italian, it gets that Italian style, right? Okay. Short says, can you show one more example with static variable? In fact, it's on the way. There are a lot of concepts which will be coming on static. Just remember these things. Object has separate copy of non-static methods. Yes, in fact, every time you get an object inside a heap memory, every time it will have its own methods. Now, why you need to have a different method is because of the methods of object works with their own data. Okay, so why do we need a static method? See, every class, of course, when you want to get an object, right? But most of the class will have some utility methods, a method which will do some changes, and might be they want to do some connection with the database. That will be happening only once. So you will use that with the help of a static method. Okay, Sheikh Azim says, do we have projects in Java course? Yes, we have it. We have a lot of projects there. Okay, photography says, can you explain what is heap and stack? We did that in the last session. If you can just rewatch the last session. Okay, awesome. So now, see, if you are getting confused, we should use static method to save memory or those things. See, it's not just about memory. It's about your use case. If you know that this particular variable will be common for all the objects, use static. Is as simple as that. It's all about use case. Sometimes you always try to compare things with memory and stuff, but sometimes it's all about use cases. Why you are creating a particular variable? Will it be different for all the objects, or will it be same for all the objects? Okay, Saroj is asking static versus final. We have not talked about final yet, right? So have patience, right? If we have not started with final yet, don't think about final. Just try to concentrate on static. Okay, do we store the static members in our memory? Yes. So there is a separate memory for class loading, and that's where the static variables goes, but we'll talk about that in some time. Okay, so now what I will do is, we have talked about static variables. So again, just to repeat, if you have multiple objects, every object will have a different data, then we have to create an instance variable. But if you have a common variable between all the objects, make it static. And to access static methods or static variables, we don't need to specify the object name, use a class name. That makes sense. Now with static, we have one more thing. What I will do is, should go back here. Let me just run this code once because we want to see the code output. So you can see we got in show. So basically we are calling this show method with the help of a class name, and it is getting printed. Now with this, we have one more. So the way we have constructor, we have one more thing which is static. So we can also create a static block. See, one of the reasons why we use constructor is to initialize the variables, right? Example, if I say age and name, and if I want to assign the value, example, let's say if I go back here and if I try to print the value of a.a1.name, and if I run this code, you can see we got a value which is null. We know why we got null is because we have not assigned a value to name yet. So if you want to have a default name, in case if you don't want to work with null, if you want to work with a default name, example in India, the default name for any boy is Rahul, right? So anybody who is watching Rahul, give a high five there. Anyway, so what I can do is, if by default every variable need to have this name which is Rahul, so I will say name is equal to Rahul, and done. If I run this code, you can see we got a name which is Rahul. So basically we can use constructor. So basically we can use a constructor to assign a value to the variable. That's one reason why we can do this. But what about static variable? What if I want to assign a default value for tech? The moment I do that, if I say tech is by default Java, I will get, okay, let's try. Not printing it. Yeah, actually you can assign the value in constructor. Anyway, we should have used the class object name, right? Okay, so you can see we got Java. Now, you can assign the value for a static variable inside the constructor, but what is a better way? So when you have a static variable, what you can do is you can use a static block. Okay, so why I'm calling this as a block, why not a method? Is because you can see we don't have a bracket there. We are just saying static and just open and close. And here I can say tech is equal to Java. So default value for tech will be Java now. Okay. Now you will say, hey, if we can assign a value to a variable inside a constructor, why we have to do that in a static block? Okay, for that, let me explain you this stuff here. So what happens is, every time you execute a class, every time you create an object, so we have this object here, it actually goes into multiple steps. The first step is your class basically loads first. So your class loads, then your class get initialized, and then you create an object. Then the object creation takes place. So basically, whenever you try to create an object, your class will load first, then it will get initialized, and then you will be then you can create an object. So the thing is, your class will load only once. So let's say if you want to create 10 objects of the same class. Example, we have an alien class here, and if I try to create 10 objects of alien class, your class will load only once. But then you will be creating object multiple times. Every time you create an object, it will assign the value of tech as, it will assign the value for tech as Java. But don't you think that's not a good idea? Why you have to assign the value for tech as Java every time you create an object? What if you want to do that only once? So use static block, because static block will be called only once, and then every time you create an object, it will call a constructor. Now with this I have a question. So if I remove this and if I keep it here, use a chat window to give me an answer. I'm not printing anything here, so I will say in static block. Okay, Trimbak says I'm not mugging up programs. I'm not able to understand. But that's why you have to start from the first session. If you directly jump into a video, it is always difficult to learn. Start from the first video. Okay, practice, learn the code, practice on your own. That's how you do it. Okay, any questions there? Yeah, that's right. Keep practicing. Okay, so if you have enjoyed till this point, hit that like button, everyone. Okay, so let me just run this code and let's see what the output is. What do you think? What the output will be? Will it first call the constructor or will it execute the static block? So now it will run. Let's run the code, and you can see it is first printing in static block, and then it is printing in constructor. And in static block only printed once because your class will load only once, and then every time you create an object, it will call a constructor. I hope that makes sense. And today I think we need to keep the class short. There's a pain. I don't know why it's paining today. Okay. Yeah, the static block will execute first, right? So every time you load a class, it will execute the static block, and then every time you create an object, it will call a constructor. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let me repeat what is happening here. You can either create an instance variable, which is a normal variable, or you can create a static variable, which is a class variable. The instance variable values will be different for all the objects, but the static variable value will be common for all the objects. And we can also create a static method, and you can say, you can call public static void show, because static simply means this method is static, which will only be called, which can be called with the above a class name. Okay. Now with this, I have a question. If I have a static method, here, do I need to create an object? Of course not, right? I can simply say alien.show. But if I have a normal method, we can say it's a non-static method. So if I say show1, now show is static and show1 is not static. And if I say in show1, can I call show1 without creating an object? Of course not. If you want to call show1, I can't do that, right? I can't say alien.show1. This will not work. This will not work. So if you want to call a non-static method, you need to create an object. So basically what you do is you say alien a1 is equal to new alien, right? And now I can say a1.show. So let me repeat. If you want to call a static method, you use a alien class. You use a class. And if you want to call a non-static method, we need to create an object. And that's what we have done. Now, what I'm going to talk about now is one of the most asked questions whenever you learn Java. Remember in the first session, when I typed public static void main, and you were asking, hey, what is that static void there? Let me answer that. Okay. Whenever you want to call a method, which is show1 in this case, you need to create an object, right? So basically, to call a method, you need object. But you can create the object once you start execution. There with me? Here, we are saying this main is a method where the execution starts. And this belongs to a class called project, right? It belongs to a class basically. So if I want to call a main method here, don't you think we need an object of project class? Let me repeat. If I want to call a method, I need object, right? So if I want to call a main method, I need to create object of project. But you can't create the object if your execution has not started yet. Okay, so that's a deadlock, right? So how do we solve this deadlock? So what we can say is, let's make this main method as static. If you make a main method static, you don't need object to call this method. And that's why the main method is static. I hope that makes sense. Cool. So I hope I was able to answer why the main method is static. Cool. Now with that, for the explanation, that like button. It's literally paining. Okay, Peter says, I failed one interview because of this static keyword. Yeah, it is tricky actually. Okay, let me repeat once again, okay? See, the idea is methods can be of two types. Let me just write it here. Methods can be of two types. It can be static or non-static, right? So methods can be static or it can be non-static. Example, in this case, on the right hand side, you can see this show is static. Show1 is non-static, okay? Whenever you want to call a static method, we need a we just have to use a class name. Example, in this case, I'm saying alien dot show. Remove all this section just so that you can see everything clearly. And let me remove all the extra stuff just to keep this thing clean. Okay. So again, this show here is a static method. To call a static method, we don't need object. We can simply say a class name dot show. That will work. So alien dot show, because alien is a class here. The show one is a non-static method, which means if you want to call it, you need to create an object. You can't call a non-static method with the help of a class name. You need an object there. That makes sense, right? Now, if you want to use this method, which is show one, which belongs to an alien class, we need an object. In the same way, don't you think this section which we have on the left-hand side is actually a class? And the main is a method. So someone is calling main, right? So main, this method is basically calling show. So that means if you want to execute a method, you have to call it. In the same way, someone is calling show main method. Okay. So to call a method, you need object. But then we also know that the main method is actually the starting point of execution. So how can you create an object if the program has not executed yet? Stay with me. So basically, to create an object, you need to start the execution. But you can't start the execution without creating the object. And that's why we said, hey, let's solve this problem by making the main method as static. Now we don't need to create an object to call it. Okay, so once you make it static, done. You can use a class name to call a method. And this is what your JVM is doing behind the scene. So JVM is able to call main because it is static. Okay. Now, any questions from your side? Okay, so question from Saroj, when to go for static block? See, if you want to do something before you start the execution, example, the moment you load your class, you want something to happen, keep that in a static block. It's that simple. So let me repeat, if you want to do something, the moment your class loads, keep it in a static block. Okay, question from Ankita is, what is string ARGS? Yeah, we are yet to talk about this one and we'll talk about that soon. Not today. We're talking about one keyword at a time. Okay, so yeah, that's about static. So let me repeat. You can make a variable static. You can make a method static. So if you want your variables and methods to be accessed by all the objects, common for all the objects, make them static. As simple as that. Okay, can we run something in a static block without the main method? See, the problem is if you don't have a main method, how will you load your class? How will you execute something? But yes, if you want, you can keep it blank. So let's say in this main, you're not writing anything, but you can say a static block, that should work. Let me print something. That's it for today. So if you want to do this, you can do this. You can just run this code and you can see you are doing nothing in the main method, but you're able to call this statement. That's it for today. Okay, Mohammed is asking, after Java full stack course, can we capable to apply job or do freelancing? Of course, it's a full-fledged course. In fact, you will not find the syllabus more in most of the institutes or in the corporate as well. In fact, no one is even focusing on microservices. Okay, why public is used at the start of every method is because we want to call it from everywhere. And we'll talk about access modifiers later, what is private, public, and protected, those stuff later. And tomorrow, let's try to have the long session. Today, I'm not 100%. So let's try to do that tomorrow. Okay, Silver Fang says, but I don't see the front end there in Java course. See, the course name is not full stack development course. It is Java full stack, which is Java full stack. So in the Java technology itself, we have multiple layers. So we have core Java, we have advanced part, with then we have, I mean, the servlet JSP, and then we have a Hibernate, Spring. So that's full stack I'm talking about. But the good thing is, I will announce that in detail later. But just to give you an idea, we're also trying to include front end in that. Most probably it will React. Yeah, will the course cover Spring Boot and microservices? Yes. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. We'll see you at that. Okay. Thank you so much, some Saptak, for the super chat, and you're doing a commendable job. Keep it up, Naveen. Oh, thank you so much. See you tomorrow, everyone. Bye bye. That's it from this session. See you in the next session.